all three of you have been very good, I think rather exceptional at taking me up on this view about telling the story. And I think Mr. Nfume really began some of this with for sure with Mr. Deffenbach. But I want to go to Mr. Thomas, Dr. Thomas, if I can first, and then have either of you then join in. This telling the story really that is the power of AI, not just machine learning, but across the avenues that each of you have. And I'd like for you, Dr. Thomas, to not recreate what we talked about yesterday in my office, but pretty close to that about how important these exercises are on a really program by program basis, that you have found characteristics that you spoke about how certain things that might be a request under one program found themselves across, if you used AI to highlight where there were inconsistencies, to look at inconsistencies that would draw you to those things. Do you mind taking a minute? Mr. Nfume, I think would learn a lot from this. Perhaps he knows it, but hearing from you, Dr. Thomas, would be important.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we have a demonstration program that I talked about earlier that we call Facet, that is really built for, just as Chairman Sessions talked about, identifying indicators of potential bad behavior, really just data points in a large data collection, and this is the Federal Audit Clearinghouse that can be used across programs. So I'll give you a couple of thoughts there. The Federal Audit Clearinghouse, houses over $1 trillion of spending every year, and these are audits that are done not only on federal programs, but these are state programs that were using federal money and local programs are using federal money. We use a combination of AI, natural language processing, and machine learning to identify, one pattern here, say that, is in a food support program that then is replicated in another program, completely different, in a completely different locality. These indicators of fraud don't mean fraud is happening, but it means someone should take a look at it. And that's really the message we try to put people, is that not only should they look at it, they should understand, is it actually a problem with the program? Is it a problem with the way the audit was done? Or was it a problem where the design of the program isn't actually collecting the right piece of data? And then you can help that program say, okay, all new grantees should produce this piece of data, will then go into your fraud risk model. And it's, we've been doing it now for several years, and it's produced lots of wonderful examples. We actually publish several of these examples on a website that is basically a pattern storage site of the patterns of fraud that you can go to at the GAO's website and look at and see these different patterns that have been identified through this tool and other tools, as well as some of my colleagues' tools.
Could you make that available to the committee, this publication?
Yes.
It is a publication, right? I'd really like to see it, because I'd like to see what are the examples that are so clear that people are missing.
Yeah, we'll provide the reports, and it's a live website you can go to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else have, once again, this is telling the story about how important it is, and it might be Social Security, it may be a death file, it may be something else. And I know that we could say, well, there's a hesitancy by the agency. Congress, you need to address that. I get that. But I'm more into the power that really exists of the tools that you have if we allow you to fully utilize them. If we look at them and say to you, yes, please go do this. So anybody want to add to that? Otherwise, I want to go to my last question. Mr. Jack is here, and he's taking time, and I want to get to him.
Thank you, Chair Sessions. Great question. Under the umbrella of artificial intelligence, we are leveraging it. We have built the fraud prevention engine, as I talked about, that uses a variety of techniques. And the best analogy I can give you is if you put the best government analyst in a room and give them an application for federal funding and access to databases, they can check and they can review and they can look at audit reports and they can look at prior history and all kinds of things. This machine can do that very rapidly, almost instantaneously. The system we built can do 20,000 applications per second, and it's using all kinds of those technologies to give us an edge on this information war, if you will, to shine light on what's actually occurring. That's, to me, is the single biggest challenge, is fraudsters are hiding what they're doing, but using these technologies in a responsible way with the right data sets, addressing the right risk, can give decision makers instantaneous visibility into what is actually occurring.
And they can go across all the entities that you allow them, because you
Proper
develop
jurisdiction, absolutely, yes.
All right, one last question, because I know I'm at my time frame too. I want to ask you, there's a great conversation last week and also in the media across the country, and that deals with the states. And we've already heard Ms. Miskell talked about how this is a huge amount of money. Tell me about your recommendation to Mr. Nfume, myself, Mr. Jack, and this subcommittee about how we ought to be looking at conversation with states. For instance, we know that some of the states want to do business with us, some don't. We know that, however, we have federal money that is at risk, and I think that they would, through our efforts, want to do things. Do we give them money? Do we ask that they update their databases? Do we share information? There may be 10 or 15 things that I could think of, but you are closer to that than I am. What would be your advice to this subcommittee about doing business with states on data and information related to federal programs?
Sure. I've done fraud investigations over my career in, I think, 35 different states, and I can tell you that they vary dramatically in their interests, their resources, their level of responsibility. So I think it starts with conversations with those states that are interested in starting the conversation as a pilot, as we discussed in your office yesterday. I think our tools we built at the PRAC, along with the GEO risk framework and other tools from Treasury, we can add tremendous value to what they're doing. Again, I would submit as a pilot project to prove its worth, but with additional insights to those states, in particular programs, looking at particular types of risks that they can't wrap their arms around, they don't have the data for, and build out from there and prove that that concept indeed can work, which I think it can.
Members of the panel here, we were meeting individually, separately, and so they did not have the advantage. And I asked, where would you start, and asked states, and then I had my ideas. And I really think that it's a conversation that we want to have Mr. Nfume on, and each of you, and perhaps some inspector generals, and perhaps some in your agency. So I see that as a definite walking out of here first thing we need to do, in addition to the legislation that I think Mr. Nfume and his members in mine would agree to. I want to thank you very much. I'm sorry I'm well over my time.